The first report was written at 2:13 a.m. It was routine, black ink on white paper. Facts, times, observations. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious, just the truth. A hit and run had occurred on a quiet city street. One man was dead. Another man, later identified as Thomas Reed, had called 911 himself. He said he heard a crash. He ran outside. He saw a damaged car speeding away. He tried to help the victim. He stayed until police arrived. The responding officer, Officer Daniel Moore, took his statement. He wrote it down carefully. In his original report, it said, "Witness Thomas Reed arrived on the scene after the collision. The vehicle is already gone. No indication he was involved. Time stamped. Signed. Filed. Case closed." But 3 weeks later, everything changed. Pressure was building. The victim's family was demanding answers. The media was asking why no one had been arrested. The department wanted results. And suddenly, Thomas Reed was no longer just a witness. A new version of the report appeared in the case file. Same date, same officer's name, same signature. But the words were different. One sentence had been added. It now read, "Witness Thomas Reed was observed near the vehicle at the time of impact and displayed signs of panic consistent with involvement." One sentence. That was all it took. The timeline shifted. In the new version, Thomas wasn't someone who arrived after the crash. He was now someone who might have been there during it. That single change turned him from a helper into a suspect. Detectives reopened the case. Prosecutors built a theory, and the jury heard only the revised report. They were never shown the original. They were never told it had been altered. They never knew that the officer had quietly edited the document days after the fact, outside proper procedure, without noting any amendment. At trial, the prosecution leaned heavily on that rewritten line. They said Thomas was present at the moment of impact. They said his panic was guilt. They said his call to 911 was a cover. The defense tried to argue that the report didn't make sense, that the physical evidence didn't match, that the timeline was impossible. But on paper, it all worked, because paper doesn't argue back. The jury convicted Thomas Reed of vehicular manslaughter. He was sentenced to 18 years in prison. His life collapsed in one afternoon. His mother fainted in court. His wife filed for divorce 2 years later. His son grew up visiting him through glass. In prison, Thomas replayed that night endlessly. He remembered exactly where he was, exactly when he arrived, exactly what he told the officer. And he remembered the words, "You did the right thing by calling." Years passed. Then, by chance, a new defense investigator requested archived digital records from the police database. Metadata most people never look at. Hidden behind the report was its edit history. 2 versions, 2 timestamps. One created at 2:13 a.m. Another was saved at 9:47 p.m. 3 weeks later. Same file, same badge number, different content. The system showed that Officer Moore had reopened the report and modified a paragraph. No supervisor approval, no amendment note, no disclosure to prosecutors, just a quiet change. When confronted, the officer claimed he was clarifying his memory. He said he recalled new details. But memory doesn't rewrite timestamps, and it doesn't erase original facts. The original report was recovered, and the difference was devastating. The original said Thomas arrived after crash. The court version placed him at the moment of impact. That shift destroyed the entire case. Without it, there was no proof Thomas was even near the vehicle. No physical evidence. No eyewitness. No motive. Just a man who tried to help. After 11 years in prison, the conviction was overturned. The judge called it a grave procedural violation. Thomas walked free at 42 years old. He stepped into sunlight with a body older than his age, with parents who had aged a decade in grief, with a son who barely knew him. The officer was never criminally charged. The department called it an administrative error. The union defended him. He kept his pension. One paragraph, one altered sentence, one shifted timeline. Ink turned an innocent man into a criminal, not with violence, not with a weapon, but with a pen. And in the justice system, sometimes the most powerful tool is not a gun, it's a report. Please share, comment, and subscribe for more true crime content.